real cost of living in Los Angeles, California. And is it as bad as people make it out to be? Now, for some background information, I am super cheap. I have very expensive tastes, and my paycheck isn't the highest in the world right now. We're working on that though. Improving slowly. So now I have lived here all of my adult years. I have been here since I was 17. And I don't know, I think this is the moment that actually hit me, was when we got in the car and I hear my cat meowing and very upset. So now we're just kind of like off. This is our first stop and we're going to start driving, and it's going to be a long drive to California. I am now 23, about to be 24. No idea where the time has gone, but I can give you a real idea of what it really costs when you are young and in an expensive city. Now, that being said, a lot of people think it's a super expensive city, but how expensive is it compared to other cities? Now, I haven't lived in other cities besides where I grew up in Connecticut, but as for statistics wise, it is the 9th most expensive city in the world. Which is a lot if you consider the fact that the world is a pretty gosh darn big place and there are a lot of cities. Now, that being said, I do think it's kind of interesting to see where it goes on the range, and the fact that it's on the top 10, but it's not actually higher up on the top 10. Above it is Tel Aviv, Paris, Singapore, Zurich, Hong Kong, New York City, which I'm not surprised about, Geneva, Copenhagen, and then Los Angeles. So that being said, there is plenty of cities that are more expensive above that, and one of them that I would love to live in temporarily is New York City, and it hurts me that it's more expensive than where I am now, and I'm like, it's already expensive here. But that being said, the minimum wage is also higher than other cities that might not be on that list. Now, the minimum wage in Los Angeles specifically is $15 an hour, which ranges out to be about $31,200 a year. Now, that might seem like a lot of money to other people with a national minimum wage, because the national minimum wage is $7.25. So that means across the US, nationally wise, the minimum wage can't be below $7.25, as long as you're not like a waitress who gets tips and then they can get paid below minimum, or if you're under the table you can get paid below minimum. But point is, if you are at that minimum wage anywhere in the state, you should be making at least $7.25, which is $15,000 a year, which I have no idea how you guys are surviving on $15,000 a year, even in a more affordable state. I was gonna say more expensive, but I meant to say more affordable state. But as for California, that $31,200, how far can it really get you? Where can you afford to live? Because we're gonna assume off the basis that if you're starting out in California, you might be making minimum wage. Even if you have a college degree, you still might be making minimum wage in the beginning. So that being said, if you make that much money, how much can you afford in rent, and what does that compare to the actual rental prices in Los Angeles? So let's say you're making the bare minimum to afford an apartment. That is double your rent. And that's just to get approved for an apartment. That's not even saying to be financially responsible and good with your money. That's just to get approved at most places. As long as it's not like a roommate situation, then you might be able to make a little bit below, but point is, you should be making at minimum 2 times your rent. So at 2 times your rent, you divide your yearly income by 2 and then by 12. So for minimum wage, that would be $1,300 a month is what you could afford in an apartment. Now, that being said, if you are looking to be more ideal with your finances, they say you should spend about 30% of your income on rent, which would leave you with $780, and you are not getting an apartment in Los Angeles for $780. In a lot of areas in LA, you wouldn't even get a bunk on a bunk bed in a shared room with other people for $780. Yes, you heard me right. They sell bunks on a bed in a room for more than $780 in a lot of places. Some you can get a little bit cheaper, like maybe $500 type of thing, $600. But again, you are living in the crappiest area. You're having no privacy. You're not even just sharing a room. You are sharing a bed level, and that's how much it would be. So I'm not going to go off of the 30%. Let's go off the idea of you making double your rent in income. Sentences, I can form them. So point is, what can you get for $1,300 in LA? Now, a lot of people would say nothing, because the average house in this area is $950,000. Yeah, you heard me right. $950,000 for an average house in Los Angeles, which means your monthly mortgage would be about $4,000 to $6,000 depending on how much you put down and how you're financing things. But point is, it's still gonna be way over that $1,300, but we're gonna assume if you are making a minimum wage and you were just starting out here, you were going to rent and not own. So what can you rent for that much money? Now again, a lot of people would probably say not that many things because they look at the wider scope of apartments in LA and think that they could never afford them, because the average one bedroom in Los Angeles, California is $2,648 for a one bedroom apartment. Now that would be way over budget and you would have to make way more money. Let's do the quick math on that and I will tell you how much you'd have to make a year. $63,552 a year. Now let's round it down to $63,000 a year. That would be $32.31 an hour. That is way higher than the $17 that you are going to get for minimum. But don't look at it just like that, because it's not as simple as affording the average one bedroom in LA. In LA, if you want to afford to live here on a lower salary, you gotta get creative. So don't think it's impossible. Just remember, you're gonna have to put more work into it. So I would say even splitting that with another person still wouldn't really be in budget. Now, sharing that one bedroom would not be ideal. All of us want to live in that $20,000 apartment I did a video on. It is amazing and fantastic and I would love to live there, but I am not affording $20,000 a month, or even the cheapest apartment, which was like $4,000 something a month. That's still way out of budget for us. So we're gonna go back to the idea of what can we do? How can we be more flexible and afford to live here? So now that being said, in Los Angeles and a lot of cities around the world, it is way more affordable to get a 2-bedroom apartment and split it with another person. Because 2 bedrooms in a lot of the areas around me at least are not that much more than a 1 bedroom. So you're spending a little bit more and you can get a whole nother bedroom to give to a whole nother person, or even possibly, if you want to, split each bedroom with 2 people. Now, I don't personally like that idea. I want at least the privacy of my own bedroom, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But to give you a perspective, my apartment, I rent out one of the bedrooms for about $1,250. So that would be in budget, and I can walk to the ocean. It is a great area. It's a safe neighborhood. My building has amenities. So there are options out there that you can afford. Now, I would say to be able to afford those apartments that are way below the average of our 1 bedroom means you're going to be getting more than 1 bedroom and you're going to be having roommates. So if you're okay with the roommate life and the young adult lifestyle, then you can afford to live here. Now, that's also saying that you have options between finding your own place and finding your own roommates, or moving into someone else's place and following their rules and what they have set up and renting out one of those bedrooms. Now, the first option gives you a lot more flexibility on where you can live, what type of lifestyle you want, what type of home life you want, but it's gonna be a lot more expensive because a lot of times you'll have to carry rent between roommates, and you'll also have to put the work into finding said roommates, and a lot of times it can cost you a little bit more money. Now, people always talk about rent being so gosh darn expensive here, but I do think you do have options, but there's also more expenses than rent. So how do other things compare to other cities? Now, for me personally, I don't think food is actually that much more expensive here than it is in another state if you put work into making sure you're shopping at discount places. And at restaurants, I would say the prices aren't that much more as long as you are going to a lower class restaurant. If you're going to a fancy, trendy place, obviously you're going to spend more money than you would in another state that doesn't even have those fancy, trendy restaurants. And that being said, sometimes it's not that it's more money, it's just smaller portions and you get less for your dollar. So I would say that you definitely do get less for your dollar at most of the places in LA, but you can find, again, those diamonds in the roughs where you can get good portion sizes for a great price. But most likely it's not going to be healthy, it's not going to be trendy, and it's going to be easy food that's not exactly the most fancy in the world. But as for grocery stores, I do find that certain neighborhoods and certain grocery chains are a lot more than I see in other states. Like a lot more expensive. Whole Foods, damn them prices. But that's not being said that going to a Ralph's or another grocery store chain that's not as fancy like Pavilions, I think your grocery bill wouldn't be that much more than it would be in another state, at least for me personally, comparing like what I would spend in Connecticut to here. But Connecticut's also another pretty expensive place. So unless you are living in the middle of gosh darn nowhere and growing your own food, I think your grocery bill is not going to be that much higher. But how is it for gas? Because everyone is talking about gas right now because gas is so gosh darn expensive. And I understand. I hope everything does better in Ukraine, and I don't mind paying these prices rather than living in Ukraine with everything that is going on right now, but that's not being said that it's not expensive. So how expensive does it compare to other states? Because California is always known to have expensive gas, but now the whole entire world seems to be going up in gas prices. So how do we compare? So I actually looked it up, and the LA average as of recently is $6.01. It's funny how they add the 1 cent there, but either way, around $6. And the national average is $4.24. Now that being said, $4.24 is a gas price I could have gotten a year ago. Not now, but I could have gotten a year ago. So I could have gotten the national average a year ago, but the national average a year ago is probably less than that anyway. But point is, yes, it is higher than the national average. It is going to cost more money. That's the realist point of it. California is always going to have more expensive gas. But I actually don't think it's that much more. Like, yeah, it's more, but everything else is more. Like, minimum wage is higher than places that have cheaper gas. And that's not being said that it's still not going to be a big expense. It's still going to be expensive compared to living somewhere else. And I do say that LA is one of those big places that you have to follow the gas prices. And you have to go to certain areas and go to certain gas stations, because even though they say the California or LA average is only $6.01, there is plenty of gas stations around me right now that cost way over that. Way over that $6 range. But I can also find some places that are still in the fives, which, whew, I filled up at $4 and something cents before all this happened, and I'm really not looking forward to my gas tank emptying. But I still think it's realistic to be able to fill up your tank. You're just going to learn creative ways to not have to spend as much gas and maybe get a more gas efficient vehicle. LA is not the place to own your pickup truck. It's not. It's not a place to own a big vehicle because you're going to spend so much more in gas, but as it is for my Prius, I honestly think I spend less on gas with my Prius in LA with LA prices than I did in Connecticut with lower gas prices and a bigger vehicle. But I also drive a little bit less, so it evens out. And that being said, other expenses besides gas and food is entertainment and parking. So parking was the weirdest thing when I moved here, and it was such an adjustment, is the idea of paying for parking almost every gosh darn where. Unless you think about it and put work into it, you have to pay for parking. And I was not used to that, because the only time I ever used to pay for parking in other states was if it was like a huge event. And if you wanted to park right at the front of said event. Or going to the Big E, if you've ever been to the Big E on the East Coast, you have to pay for parking. But that was the only time I really used to it, and I was just like, oh, I have to pay for parking, this never happens. But in LA, I'm like, oh, I gotta pay for parking, oh, a normal weekend. Either way, the longer you live here, even though parking is very expensive, and some places are absurdly expensive, just don't park there. It's as simple as that. Parking is not that big of an expense as long as you are parking in the right areas in LA. Some places will literally charge you for every 15 minutes you park. And it'll be like $10 for 15 minutes. And no cap for the day. Don't park there. I don't even park at the lots that cost like $10 or $20 to park. You look around, you walk a little bit further, and you can get either free or way, way cheaper to park than you think it would be, because the place right next door is $10 an hour. And you can literally go to one place next to it, and it does take some trial and error on finding these places and looking at signs and looking online to figure it out. But some places literally next door will have a $10 maximum for the day, and the place next to it will be $10 an hour. So just get creative and look around, just like with everything in LA when it comes to food, to rent. You just have to put more work and thought into it than you would another state, but I still think it could be reasonable and not that expensive. But you have to put more work into it. Now that being said, entertainment compared to other states, because yeah, we need a place to live. We need food on our bellies. We need to park when we go places. Never park for the grocery store though. Like, just go to another grocery store, okay? Just don't do it. And for all like hospitals and medical stuff, you always have to pay for parking. So park in the grocery store next to it. because most of the time there is one. But that being said, all of that aside, I still want to have fun. I still want to enjoy LA. I still want to go to events. I still want to go see stuff. I still want to do things. I want to participate. I want to live. I'm in California. I don't want to just sit inside and pay for my expensive apartment. I want to do things. So how do those expenses compare? Now, I would say a lot of event stuff does cost more here than it does in other states. I do find things that aren't that big or that exciting or that long, like it's something quick to do, costs more money. And you might think like, oh crap, that discounts the idea of entertainment and that discounts the idea of having fun and doing it on a regular basis. But it actually doesn't. It goes back to the idea of being creative again. And I think California actually has so many free events, free activities to do on a regular basis. Literally every weekend, every month, there is something going on that you do not have to pay for. And that is not like that in other states. Yeah, other states have stuff occasionally, like their fall activity or their summer thing that happens, but it's only like an event every couple months or maybe once a month at maximum. California have things that are rotating going on all throughout the year, every single day that you can do for free. Now that's not being said you wouldn't have to pay for parking at a lot of these places that have free activities. Like there's plenty of museums that do free museum days or free museum time periods, but a lot of times you have to pay for parking, so it kind of offsets itself. But if you can go to these free events and still, put a little work into where you're gonna park or walk a little bit further, it can be a free event, whereas another state, that's something you probably have to pay for to do. So I think there's plenty of things you can do in California, including going to the beach. You're in California, you're here, go on a hike, go to the beach, and 99% of that stuff is free as long as you maneuver around the charge for parking. So to answer the question in the beginning, is California as expensive as people make it out to be? Can you really afford to live here on a minimum wage? I would actually say yes, you can afford to live here on a minimum wage if you want a basic beginner life. I don't think it's realistic to grow and have more in life, but if you are younger and you want to sustain the basic living conditions, living in a basic apartment, having roommates, not going out to like as many fancy restaurants, and being way, way more creative. Creative is the key to living here. Finding those free events to go to, finding the parking that's not as expensive, going to the right grocery stores. If you want to be creative, you can afford to live here on minimum wage. Now that being said, you're not going to be able to afford to buy a house when you're younger, especially if you're making minimum. You're also not going to be able to afford to start a family as early as you would probably in another state. So that being said, is it worth it? I would say California is only worth it to live here if you're making less money, if you really, really want the lifestyle and you're gonna put the work into making the most out of it. Because if you're not willing to put the work in and get creative and you're not going to love the sunshine and the beach and all the hikes, then it is not worth living here. If you want that California income, which that being said, California, you are way more likely to get a job over minimum wage and for more money than another state, because the fact that minimum wage is higher, so that already is going to mean a higher paying job. And also there's a lot more jobs here that pay over minimum wage than there are in other states, because it is a reality. Other states have such job scarcity that is insane. And it's not being said California does have job scarcity to a degree, but there is way more opportunities here in so many different fields than there are anywhere else in another state. There are a few exceptions to that, like New York and other big hubs. But if you don't want that and you want life to be a little bit easier, the ideal thing to do might actually be to get a California job that is remote. So you can get that higher pay, but not have to live in California, so you can have that high income, but not have the high living expenses, and then you can find that balance, and then you can do more with your money, and you can visit California on occasion if you want a little bit of our lifestyle, but you don't need it every weekend. Then visit us and take our high-paying jobs and live somewhere else that's cheaper. Now we have covered so many different topics in the most general sense to explain how much it really costs to live here and if it's worth it and if you can do it on a minimum wage. Now if you want more detailed information on certain aspects like apartment hunting, I have done so many videos comparing apartment prices in downtown LA to Santa Monica and the lower end to the higher end apartments. I've also done plenty of videos on financing, helping you with stocks, helping helping you with credit cards, helping you do so many things to figure out adulting while I'm attempting to figure it out myself. So feel free to check out those other videos on my channel, and please, please, please hit the like button and the subscribe button down below before you go. It really helps me out, and I'm really trying to grow this channel, so I hope you have a great rest of your morning, evening, night, whatever it is for you. I'll see you Wednesday.